All right, so today we're talking about money and how much money as a freight broker do you need on hand to efficiently operate your freight broker business. Now, we're going to look at this from two different perspectives. We're going to look at it from the factoring company perspective, because some of you have factoring companies in place already. And when you have a factoring company in place, that means that you have a third party that's come in and say, hey, we're paying Alliance Logistics invoices. They don't have to pay for those invoices. So you're not going to need as much money as someone who was using in-house financing. In-house financing basically saying that the freight broker is responsible for his own receivables. He has to pay his own invoices. So he's going to need more money on hand than the person who has a factoring company. So we're going to dive into both of these, and we're going to tell you exactly how much money we think you need on hand for each of these situations. But before we get into that, I have a very important question for you, and I want to lead into that with a scenario. Now, in order for you and I to be born into this world, we have to have money. There's a certain amount of money that have to be paid for that to happen. Now, in order for you to die out of this world, you have to have money, because we have to go out and pay for funeral expenses when we die. So to be born and to die, we have to have money. Now, everything in between that, or at least most everything, requires, again, money. So money, as you can see, is a priority. The only question is, what priority level is it in your book? What priority number do you assign money? Now, that we can agree that money is important, here's the question. What does it say about you when it comes to your ability or inability to earn, preserve, and grow money? Because we've already said that it is absolutely a priority. So what does it say about you if you have the ability or you don't have the ability to earn, preserve, and grow money? What does it say about your IQ, your financial IQ? What does it say about your savvy, your financial savvy, when it comes down to earning, protecting, and growing money? What does that say about you, or your inability? If you don't have the ability to do it, what does it say about you? Does it say something about how good of a business owner that you will be, depending on how well you're able to do these three things: earn, preserve, and grow money? Does that say something about your financial awareness, your financial knowledge? Okay? If it does, and it does not say what you want it to say, here's the good news. You can change it. No two ways about that. You can change your IQ. You can change your knowledge level if you want to. But now, here's what has to happen in order for it to change. It has to come from you, because I can't force you to change. You can't force me to change. Each of us have a gate of change inside of us, and we have to go inside of ourselves to unlock that gate, and then we're open and willing to change things. And then we can fix that IQ. We can fix our financial knowledge. We can become more savvy. But it all starts with changing the way that we currently see things, because understand that the way that you see things got you to where you are to this point. So in order for things to change for you, you have to change. And that doesn't mean that everything has to change all at once, but it does have to change gradually. As you start to learn different things about money and how money works, you start to go and apply those things, and you can get a different result. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into money, factoring, and in-house, and we're going to show you exactly how much money we think you should have on hand for each of those scenarios. So before we get into the video, I want to make sure that you understand where I'm coming from when I suggest the numbers that I'm going to suggest. I look at money in a certain way when it comes down to starting a business. I think production is more important than having a lot of money on hand. To me, when you have a lot of money on hand, you tend to, especially as a new business owner, spend money on things that you don't need to spend money on. You put resources in front of production. So I don't like that way of doing business. I think that's the wrong way of doing business. I put production up front. It's all about you and what you produce as a business owner, not necessarily about spending money. Because this is not a money spending game as freight brokers. This is not about how much money you can spend will determine how much farther you get. No, it's about coming in and being efficient, streamlining the processes, making sure that you're not spending too much money in the front part of your business, getting the business rolling first, making some money, and then you can look at adding resources. But I think a business owner with a lot of money, surplus of money, he has a big disadvantage. And the reason for that is because he spends money thinking that is going to move the business forward, and that is not. Production, you moving loads, getting customers and moving loads, that is what's going to make money. So I just wanted to make sure that you understood where my point of view would be coming from, and you can look at the situation and decide, hey, I know this is what Brandon said about the numbers, but this is where I think my numbers should be. But I'm going to give you where I think is a starting place where you should be with factoring companies and in-house financing. Either of those scenarios, I'm going to give you a number, and you take a look at that number and decide whether or not it's good for you. Okay, so first let's talk about those of you that have factoring companies in place. How much money do you need on hand if you already have a company that's financing your receivables? Of course, you're not going to need as much money as you would need if you didn't have a factoring company on hand. So that's a positive, in my opinion, to have a factoring company on hand, because now you're not required to have as much money on hand. Now, how much, though, do you need? I think it really boils down to how much are your operating expenses. Freight brokerages are usually going to cost between $700 and $1,000 per month for a new freight brokerage. And I personally think that if you have a freight brokerage and you're paying $700 to $1,000, you are pretty good as far as what your expenses are. But now remember, when you first start that business, $700 to $1,000 is coming out of your pocket until the business starts to make money. So how much money do you need on hand? I personally think that you need at least minimum 6 months of expenses on hand. When you get ready to start that freight broker business, 6 months of expenses on hand. Meaning that if you have $1,000 in expenses, you're going to need $6,000 on hand. Now, why do we say you need $6,000 or 6 months of expenses? Well, because it's going to take you some time usually to start moving loads. You don't just usually jump out and start your business today and next week you're moving loads and making money. It actually took me about 2 months to move my first load, and it took about 6 months before I really start making money. So I think that it's at least you should have a minimum of $6,000 on hand. If you have a business that's costing $1,000 per month, you need about $6,000 on hand to make sure that you can cover the first 6 months of your business. That way, if you don't move any loads, then you can still pay for that $700 to $1,000 from the money that you have on the sideline. That is about the extent of the cash that I think that you need on hand if you have a factoring company in place. Because to have more money than that means that you're going to prolong the time that it takes you to move loads. And what we want to do is to get in load moving posture as quickly as possible. We have to get loads moving because we have to make money. And see, when we have a surplus of cash on hand, we kind of relax and sit back and say, oh, okay, I still have money to pay for my expenses, so I'm not really worried. No. That's money that's going to run out. So we need to be very concerned. We need to be aware that we have 6 months of operating expenses, and we need to be ahead of that time. We want to start moving loads in the first 30 days if we can, and we can. That way, we can preserve the cash that we have on hand. We can preserve that cash and not have to use it for operating expenses. Hopefully the business will have gotten to the point where it's starting to be able to take care of its own bills. The sooner we get to the point where the business can take care of itself, the better off we'll be. So about $6,000, 6 months of operating expenses is what you need on hand for a company that has a factoring company in place. So now let's take a look at in-house financing. In-house financing is a bit different than a factoring company, because now I'm responsible for paying those invoices out of my pocket. So I have to have X amount of dollars on the sideline to be able to pay for those invoices as they come in. Now, here's the deal. I always ask people, how many loads do you want to move per month if you're paying your own invoices? Because the number of loads you move per month will determine the amount of money that you need. If you move 20 to 25 loads in a month, you can easily be looking at about $50K per month in invoices. So if you're moving 20 to 25 loads per month, you're going to want to have about $50,000 on hand to be able to pay for those 20 to 25 loads when they come due. And you'll wait for the shipper to pay you to get your money back. Now, the problem with that type of financing, in-house financing, is you're limited to the amount of money that you have will determine the amount of loads that you can move. So if you run out of money, then you can't move any more loads. You're basically capped at 20 to 25 loads per month. That's why I like the factoring company option, is because I am not limited when it comes down to the amount of loads that I can move. I can move as many loads that I can move without having concern as to how I'm going to pay for those loads. You're always worried about how you're paying for loads when you're doing in-house financing. So you're going to need $56,000 on hand to operate your freight broker business if you have in-house financing and you want to move 20 to 25 loads. If you want to move less than that, then you can of course adjust that number and it would decrease the amount of money that you have to have on hand. But just remember, with in-house, you always have that concern of how am I going to pay for these loads? Cash flow becomes an issue, because you always got to be watching the money. All right, so that's what I wanted to share with you today. I certainly hope this information has been helpful. If you're interested in learning more about the freight broker business, I'm going to leave a link in the description. Check out my free 5-video series titled How the Load Movement Process Works. What it's going to do is give you a look into the business, let you see it by looking over my shoulder, watching me in my office as I'm moving loads, talking to shippers, talking to carriers. That way you can get a really good idea of exactly how the business works before you take the plunge. And also remember this: we are what we do over and over and over again. Excellence is not just about doing one thing and then bam, I'm excellent or I'm great at it. It's about what you're doing over and over and over again. Repetition, doing something until it becomes habit. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about becoming a better money manager. Learning how to earn, protect, and grow your money. Because it's not just about making money. We have to be able to protect and grow the money that we have, because what we always have to remember is that saving money at a 0% interest rate, or almost that, will not do you any good. We have to be able to take that money and grow that money over time. And we do that by learning about money and how it works, learning about investments and how they work. What you do over and over and over again, you eventually become that. Have a great day. Have a great week. See you at the top, because the bottom is much too crowded. And last but not least, just in case you've been hearing about the load board, but you're not quite sure how it works, I'm going to leave you my free tutorial here where we're going through the load board and showing you exactly how it works. So just click here if you'd like to watch that video.